Okay, well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another wonderful, beautiful Friday here in Kansas. Welcome to another web Zoominar. My name is Bruce Cladney, the Executive Director for the Kansas Association of Counties. It's a pleasure to have you on again today. I know many of you were probably on yesterday. As promised, the Zoom link has been posted to the KAC website, so if you need to watch that webinar again from yesterday or share it with one of your colleagues, please don't hesitate to do so. Go to our website, kansascounties.org, and you will be able to find it there on the front page. So today's webinar is the second of many to come. Each Friday we're going to be getting together with you either at this point in time, or there's a few Fridays throughout coming up where we'll be in the afternoon, but for the most part plan to be joining us at this time on Fridays. And basically what we'd like to do is interact with you folks, answering your questions, getting some of the information out that needs to be gotten out, and also highlighting some of the programs that you certainly might want to do in your county. So with that, why don't we go ahead and get started. Please don't disturb your neighbor. Go ahead and mute your microphones if they are not already muted. I'd appreciate that. That way everybody can hear and enjoy today's presentation. So today we're joined by the Recovery Office as well as some other guests, and they're going to spend a few minutes introducing themselves. But this general webinar will provide an overview of the direct spending plan template to be provided to counties this week. And I know there's been some questions about the spreadsheet that you all saw yesterday, and I believe it's going to be posted today after this webinar with all of the other materials that are being presented as well. That way you guys can start working on these different projects, these different plans, and the different accounting pieces to this major task. So, as well as the presentations on investment ideas by the Kansas Department of Agriculture and the Kansas Housing Resource Corporation. So the KHRC and the KDA presentations will be the first of many focused on providing counties with actionable investment ideas for CARES Act funds, and will focus on housing and critical infrastructure investments. So with that, folks, I'd like to turn it over to the Recovery Office. And Vijay, I saw that you were on the line, and go ahead and take it away.
Great, thanks, Bruce. Good morning, everybody. I want to start with a few housekeeping items here before we jump in, but while I do that, I'm going to jump into the presentation that we have for you today. The first housekeeping item is that I know that many of you are waiting for the spreadsheet that was presented yesterday. I just want to say that it is in the process of being posted on the website in the link that we provided yesterday. And so it's not already on there. It will be on there shortly, regardless of that. Everything get email after this webinar. We apologize for the delay on that. We're trying to get everything organized on the website. Today's webinar is going to be specifically about the direct aid template, as well as a few presentations by our wonderful partners, the Kansas Housing Resources Corporation and the Kansas Department of Agriculture. Those two presentations will be the first of many. Next week's presentation on Wednesday will be from the Children's Cabinet and the Kansas. Can you all hear me?
Yeah, you're breaking up, Vijay. I don't know what's going on. You sound kind of like a robot on my end. I don't know if there's something that we need to... I apologize, folks.
Can you all hear me now?
Yes, you're sounding, I think, a little bit better. Keep talking.
So hopefully everyone can hear me now.
Okay.
So I just wanted to reiterate that this webinar specifically is going to be focused on the direct aid template, as well as two presentations by our partners at the Kansas Housing Resources Corporation and the Kansas Department of Agriculture. Those two specific presentations will be the first of many that are focused on investment ideas that counties can focus on for their direct aid plans. Next week's webinar will include the Children's Cabinet as well as the Department of Children and Families, and we'll focus on childcare. We'll also include the Kansas Department of Aging and Disability Services, which will focus on nursing homes, mental health, and other related issues. And so we'll begin with recovery office updates, go into the direct aid template, and finally, we'll have the folks from those two organizations present. So just quick updates. I know Taylor went through some of these yesterday, but I just wanted to do a brief refresher for anybody that wasn't on the presentation yesterday. First is that counties are continuing to send in their resolutions. We really appreciate everybody getting those in very quickly. So far, we have 84 counties that have submitted their resolutions. There are a few counties that have not, as you can see, and there's some that don't have their next county meeting scheduled before the 13th. We just want to encourage all of those counties to get that money, to get that resolution in by the 13th. If you want to make sure that you have the funds by the 15th. So we are not going to be dispersing funds unless the resolution has been submitted to our office. You should receive a confirmation email. If not, next week we will post and let everybody know if we have made sure everyone that has submitted their resolution, everybody is clear on that. Next, I just want to say that we're in the process of hiring multiple staff positions at the Office of Recovery to help us expand the capacity of our team, as we've talked about before. And finally, that we're receiving new guidance from the federal government almost every other day, it seems. If we're going to try to incorporate those into FAQs, reporting templates, and other information, and we just ask you to be patient with us because all of those new guidance documents cause us to maybe change our course a little bit sometimes, and we want to make sure that we're providing you accurate information and accurate reporting templates that fully reflect what the federal government needs from us so that you don't have to go through and redo anything moving forward. So we appreciate your patience on that. And I just want to reiterate, and I hope you tried to illustrate this, but any federal guidance that we're getting from the Treasury is always posted online, and we'll try to post it very quickly on our website, either in the meeting materials from our executive committees at Spark or just on the county resources page. So continually check those websites to just make sure that you have the same guidance that we do and you can be reviewing those at the same time that we do. Now, I'd like to go into the direct aid template. Before I do so, I think that there's been a few kind of larger questions about what this template is used for. And I want to provide a brief overview here. So just so there's some clarity, this document, the direct aid form that we're going to go through today, is not a record-keeping document for costs that you've already incurred. It's a planning tool. So it's not a reporting or accounting form per se to be used for compliance purposes. It is just a tool to achieve a few different purposes. One, it's a mechanism for us at the Recovery Office and the Spark Task Force to ensure that all of the money that you have set aside for direct aid is being spent on eligible expenditures. And so that's the whole purpose of you all submitting this on the 15th and us getting some time to review them, is to ensure that you're not having to come back on the back end and repay any of the money because anything that you have budgeted for is ineligible. So we're going to make sure to tell you that in a prompt manner so that you are only spending money on eligible expenditures. The second thing is it is just a tool for you to organize your spending plans and priorities. It is a way for you at the county level to solicit proposals from outside entities or public and private partners and really plan out the next couple of months. And then you can refer back to this document as you're spending. And we want this to be a resource for you all as much as it is a resource for us. And finally, I want to say it is a way for us to identify statewide gaps in spending so we can supplement those in further rounds of investment. So if we see that after all the plans are submitted that there's a gap in spending, let's say for nursing homes, then the state can come in and supplement that and provide you all some extra funds. And so this is a way for us to take a catalog, an overview of the entire state and make sure that we're filling the needs and supporting you all in maybe the high demand areas that you're seeing as you develop these plans. And so I just want to say that we want this to be as much of a tool for you all as it is for us. And we want it to be a way for you to know what's eligible and not eligible before you start spending, because that's really important as you plan out the next couple of months. The next thing is, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, I think there's been some confusion on what you need to submit on the 15th and what the differences are between the two forms. So by August 15th, you will submit 2 documents to the Office of Recovery. One is the county reimbursement reporting form that Taylor went over yesterday. That form is specific to reimbursements for the reporting period of March 1st to July 31st. So all of the reimbursements that Taylor went over yesterday that you may be collecting from your school districts or from other entities or from cities specifically in your counties, those sorts of reimbursements need to be illustrated in this document. The document that Taylor went over yesterday is used for accounting and compliance purposes. So it's for money that you have spent or you are going to reimburse or have reimbursed. And so that is the kind of Bible for accounting that you all can be using. I want to say that I want to reiterate in the resolution that it clearly says that all counties must make sure that there's a process for cities and other subrecipients, schools, for example, in their county to submit reimbursements. The Kansas Association of Counties and the League of Municipalities are working together to put together a resolution for cities so that you all have an additional layer of accountability for cities that you're providing money to. And we'll post that on our website. So just like we've asked you to submit a resolution, there's a template that you can ask your cities and other subrecipients to submit. And that will be posted, but also communicated by those 2 entities. The second form that we're going through today is a planning document, like I mentioned earlier. It is not to be used to report things that you've already spent money on. It is to future forward say, after I've gotten all my reimbursements figured out, this is what I'm going to do with the rest of the money. And that can be amended as we go forward. So I know there were a bunch of questions about, hey, I may have some additional expenses moving down the line that I don't have any visibility on. Maybe an outbreak happens or something else happens and I need to spend money on. These can be amended. It is just a way for us to do a initial check-in on the funds and make sure everything is eligible and accurate. So right now I'm going to go through the specific reimbursement spreadsheet that will be available on the website and will be sent to you all afterwards. So if you give me 1 second, I'm going to share that screen. Hopefully everybody can see my screen here. So this is set up very similarly to the form that went up yesterday, just so there's some consistency across the board in how you have to interact with all of these forms. So the county direct aid spending plan is a strictly a planning document. I'm going to go through each portion of this. And again, we'll provide maybe some additional information through the questions that you all have answered today or another memo or anything like that if there's any additional clarification that's needed. There's 2 types of sheets here that you'll need to fill out to illustrate what you plan on spending the money on. The first is planned independent expenditure. We'll go through that in a second. Planned independent expenditures, any one-time expenses that you are making at the county level that are not part of a larger program or a transfer to another subrecipient. So for example, if you just need to buy a bunch of PPE for one of your county agencies, one-time expense of barriers for one of your county offices, then you can illustrate those in the planned independent expenditures sheet, and we'll go through that in a second. The second type of sheet that's included here is a program tab, and that is basically any sort of new program, project, or transfer that you plan on doing to another entity or you plan on establishing. So that can range anywhere from, hey, I've got a proposal for my local chamber of commerce to do a public-private partnership for grants to businesses. That needs to be illustrated in a separate program tab. or I'm doing a transfer to one of my school districts, just a general pot of money so they can spend what they need to spend to reopen in the fall. That needs to be illustrated in a separate program tab. So each separate program or transfer needs to be, and you'll need to fill out one of these program tabs, and we'll go through that in a second. Very quickly, this sheet includes just your county, if you've submitted your resolution, just some information on how you addressed the disproportionate impacts on racial minorities. This can be via how you conducted your meetings or how you considered proposals, or maybe specifically what discussions you had. This is up to you to fill out. We just want to make sure that you all have taken this into account as you've done your plan. And finally, there's a signature, and this would be done by the primary county contact. And we encourage you to continue to fill out that form if you haven't done that so far. So I'll begin here with the planned independent expenditures. So this is what I was speaking about earlier in terms of one-time expenditures at the county level. So what you'll do is for every one of those expenditures, you'll just fill out a line item. And this is very similar to the spreadsheet that Taylor filled out, so it's easier for you all to follow. So you'll just illustrate the date that's expected, the expenditure title. For example, I put an example of PPE for a county department, the description, the cost, the category and subcategory, which are just things that you can select, pre-select, and then finally where it's going to go. So this PPE is for some local department. Maybe it's for my emergency management folks, or it's for my health department, just illustrating to us where the money is going to go. And then some comments, maybe it just says additional PPE beyond what you've already gotten or something like that. So for all of your independent county expenditures, what you're going to do is just fill out individual examples, such as the one that I've put out here. Next, let's go to the example programs. So you're going to fill one of these program tabs out for every new program or every planned bulk transfer to another subrecipient. So the example here is for a business grant program, which I know that many of you are planning on doing. So for example, I'm going to fill out the primary government sponsor, which is my economic development authority. Then I'm going to fill out the project co-sponsor if there is one. So for example, here, Test Town Chamber of Commerce is the name of the organization that we're partnering with here. And then you're going to fill out very brief details. So program or project title, existing program or project, no, this is a new program. I'm just not supplementing an existing one, I'm creating a new program. Illustrate the scope, the expenditure category, the project timeline, and try to be as specific as possible. And then how does the program meet the requirements in the CARES Act? Here you can illustrate a specific part of the toolkit that illustrates this program, or maybe you heard something in the webinars, or maybe you've seen some examples from other states. Just explain to us how you know that this is required in the CARES Act, the population amount of people that are impacted by the program. I know this is a large number, but and then the at-risk populations impacted, and you can illustrate those in this tile. But the specific types of populations, we've given you some examples in the instruction section that I'll go through at the end. Finally, there's a sample proposed budget. And so we've just given you a budget template here. For example, it illustrates salaries, how much money for communications, for office supplies, and then for specifically how much in grants to businesses. So for example, this program is $150,000 in grants to businesses, and then $17,000 in other assistance. Maybe you're also providing them office supplies or whatever, or you're providing them additional grants for the application fee or something like that. And then finally, where the funding is coming from. So for example, this is a public-private partnership. So $200,000 of it is coming from the Coronavirus Relief Fund, and then $50,000 of it is coming from a private business match. So this is the example that we've laid out for you. And then we've put out the same template in a blank version for you all to fill out. A couple of things that I want to be very clear to call out here as you're filling these out. The first one is that we understand that you may not have all of these budgets figured out or budget items figured out for your programs. We want you to try to fill out as much of this as possible when you submit it. And the easiest way to do it is, let's say I have a school district in my county that wants $400,000 for any sorts of expenses that they need to incur to reopen schools in the fall. The easiest thing to do, copy this sheet and send it to them and have them fill it out for you. And then when they fill it out, you can review it and then copy and paste it back in here. So you don't have to do the work at the county level. I know many of you have asked for a sample grant application, and this is the easiest way to do it, is just take this blank application and send it to whoever is interested in submitting a proposal for your funds. And then once you have that, you can review it. And then if it all looks good, you can copy and paste it in here. If there's any parts of this budget that don't apply to you or don't make sense or you don't actually have figured out right now, that's okay. Just delete them. And let's say the school district comes to you or somebody else comes to you and says, I need $400,000, but I don't know exactly what I'm going to spend it on. It's just, I need that money to figure out in the future. Try to give us the best information that you can right now. Maybe you generally know it's going to be for school-related expenses. Just have them try to figure out to the best of their ability. Again, this is a planning document, and it gives us the best information and gives you all the best information, and is also a reporting and accountability tool for you so that you don't have to be stuck doing all this work and you can just refer back to this, hey, this is what they said they were going to spend the money on. So finally, I'm just going to tell you kind of how to work the mechanics of this document. So we've given you two tabs here of blank grant application or project application tabs. If you want to create other ones, all you do, and the instructions are in the instructions tab. All you do is you go to right click on program, and then you click move or copy, and then you click create a copy, move to the end, and then it'll create another copy of the blank one for you. And so you can create as many of these as you see fit. The instructions are very detailed as to what you need to put in every part of that grant application. And I've also reproduced here what each of these sheets are used for. And then it also illustrates to you how you actually need to fill out or create a new program tab. The last thing is very important, and I want to go through it right now, is on the summary page, you'll see two tools that we'd like you to fill out by August 15th after you've gotten your reimbursements done and after you've filled out this planning spreadsheet. The first one is a totaling tool. So it is a way for you to ensure that all of your funds are taken care of. So what you'll do is you'll put in your total county allocation, for example, $1 million. You'll take the total from the spreadsheet that Taylor went over yesterday. So you'll say, total, I have $250,000 in reimbursements. And then you'll add up the totals from your planned independent expenditures here and from all of your program tabs, from all of your different program tabs. So then let's say I had $100,000 in planned independent expenditures and $650,000 in programs after I add up all those tabs. All of these will be subtracted from this, and then finally this should equal 0. So that's when you know everything is accounted for. Everything that isn't been reimbursed or accounted for in the other spreadsheet has been accounted for in this spreadsheet. The next tool is a monthly spending planning tool. This we'd like you to fill out to the best of your ability. So you just take the amount of money that's illustrated in this entire spreadsheet, you put it here. Let's say there's $1 million that you've had to play with in this spreadsheet, and then you can break it down by month based on when you think that this money will go out. And this is just a way for you all to plan out month by month how much I need to be spending, and for us to know this is how much money we expect to be accounted for when you're submitting your monthly reconciliations. So if you have $300,000 here that you think you're going to spend in September, when you submit your September reconciliation, then we'll check this and see, is it close to $300,000? And if it's not, it's okay. We just want to make sure that there's a plan for how you're going to spend this money. And as you get to November and December, it's a way for you to say, hey, by this time I would have had to spend over $850,000, $950,000. I haven't spent that money yet. Maybe I need to reevaluate, and maybe we need to come in and maybe help or whatever. It's just a way for you to manage and plan all these funds. We tried to make this as easy to use as possible, but we understand that it can be difficult. And so we'll continue to talk about this and provide additional resources and additional webinars. So as you submit questions, we'll answer them and maybe go through specific parts of this that aren't abundantly clear. But again, this will be posted on the website. I know I went through a lot of information there, but I just want to reiterate that this specific information is a resource for you all. And then there's a lot of different avenues for you all to ask questions, and please let us know if you run into any hurdles here. The last few things before I turn it over to Ryan here from our Kansas Housing Resource Corporation for a presentation is we've gotten a few questions about reimbursements as they relate to schools and other institutions that are in multiple counties. I just want to reiterate that the resolution illustrates that the county that has the headquarters in it is who is responsible for that specific school district or that specific institution. But that doesn't mean that that's the only county that can spend money on that specific school district. We encourage you to share that with share the cost or work with other counties if needed for school buildings that are in different counties. But again, the final responsibility lies with wherever the headquarters is. I just wanted to call that out. So what I'm going to do now, and we're very excited about this and really appreciative of Ryan Vincent from the Kansas Housing Resource Corporation is here to present some housing related ideas, and they're an incredible resource, and him and his team are just a wealth of knowledge. So Ryan, I'm going to turn it over to you to share your screen and begin, but thank you again for all your time today.
Thanks so much, Vijay, and this entire Spark Office of Recovery, as well as the Association of Counties. Hopefully you can hear me. Vijay, can you just confirm that you can hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, and I'm sharing my screen as we speak, so hopefully you'll be getting that as well.
Yes, Ryan, it looks great. This is Bruce from the KAC, and you sound good, and the screen looks great.
Great, thank you very much. We're so pleased to be here presenting today. I know a lot of the counties we work with, and some of you may not be familiar with us. I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about our programs, very high level, and then give most of our time to kind of dedicate to suggest some different investment opportunities for the counties with these CARES Act to really address some housing needs. I did want to make sure I mentioned that KHRC's Deputy Director, Jeanette Spurgeon, is monitoring the chat session, and we'll try to answer any questions that you have as we go through this presentation. But before we actually jump into the meat of this, I want to just kind of let you know why we're talking about housing. I think being in county government, you're all aware that the lack of affordable housing has always been a problem in our state and in virtually every county around the state. That said, COVID has made it a crisis. It's escalated a problem into a crisis. And I think there's a bit of a lag right now between our extended unemployment benefits and some of the federal stimulus funds that have kind of addressed some of that immediate short-term needs. But we're already seeing an uptick in evictions and foreclosures as the different moratoriums and forbearance have been lifted. We similarly are projecting that I just read an article in the Aspen Institute published that as of June 30th, approximately 62,000 or 7% of Kansas renters were at risk of eviction. That number by September 30th is projected to go up to 175,000 or nearly 20% of Kansas renters. So we're truly looking at what could be a tsunami of coming evictions and possibly foreclosures. So we're doing everything we can as an agency and as working with our partners to address this need before it becomes a crisis. And it's ironic because home has never been more important than it is right now. I think we all realize the home is so much more than just four walls and a roof, so much more than just shelter. But these last months, as we've been sheltering in place, we've realized the home is a place for education. It's a place to conduct commerce or business. It's a place for community gatherings, for Kiwanis, for Boy Scouts, for Girl Scouts. It's a place for church. It's a place to get our healthcare needs met. It's a place for recreation, for childcare, and all of those things are so essential for us to get our economy back online, to get our communities back online. So while housing may be kind of on the back burner, it's certainly so important to address so many of your individual needs as counties and our needs as the state. With that, I'm going to jump into a quick overview of KHRC itself. For those that aren't familiar with us, we formerly were the Department of Commerce and Housing, Division of Housing years ago, and we now are a self-supporting nonprofit public corporation that administers a variety of housing and community programs across the state. Our programs are primarily federally funded, but we do one state-funded program that I'll talk about. It's important to know that we've dealt with Recovery Act funds in the past. We administer federal funds all the time, so we know how tricky they are, and sometimes they feel bureaucratic, and yet they're so vital to do what you need to do. And we really understand and empathize with the situation that you as county administrators find yourselves in. What we do is that we help Kansans access the safe, affordable housing they need and the dignity they deserve. That's something that we live and breathe here at KHRC. Hopefully you've seen it if you've worked with us, and we'll see that in us through this entire process. Who we work with? Well, we work with people like you, local government officials, mortgage lenders, property managers, developers, nonprofits, federal, state, local governments, so many good partners out there that it takes to make affordable housing work for our communities. Our programs really run the gamut. We've got everything from emergency housing, literally providing emergency shelters and roofs over people's head that are experiencing homelessness. We've got programs that work with local wonderful nonprofits in your communities, including community action agencies. We have a tenant-based rental assistance program to help people with rental deposits and utility assistance get back on their feet. We run a variety of housing development programs. That includes our low-income housing tax credit, home, and National Housing Trust Fund programs, which develop multifamily housing in virtually every community in the state, rural and urban alike. Almost all of the new housing on the multifamily side that you see in your communities has some touch from KHRC and our various housing partners. We do work closely with HUD, we work closely with IRS, we work closely with USDA Rural Development, as well as virtually every nonprofit that has anything to do with housing in the state. I'll mention briefly our moderate income housing program. That's a state-funded program. It's a wonderful resource that we get from our state legislature. It's specifically to address moderate income housing needs, but we'll be talking about that quickly. Then we do administer our first-time homebuyer program and work with participating lenders in your communities. We regulate the installation of manufactured housing in the state by statute. We run a weatherization assistance program through some wonderful service providers around the state to provide free cost weatherization improvements. So we're not only addressing those short-term utility high bills, but we're addressing the long-term needs by ensuring that there's good efficiencies at the homes. And finally, we know that we're spending a lot of federal money at our office every year, and we're especially spending a lot of federal money right now. So we know how important compliance is. We want to make sure that those funds are spent well, in compliance with federal requirements, and then just generally that we're really ensuring that the funds are used to benefit those that they were intended to benefit. So that's something that we take very important at our office. We have about half of our staff dedicated just to that. We're located in Topeka, and that's kind of a very quick overview of what KHRC does. But now I really want to talk about kind of what you're interested in, and that's how to spend a lot of federal money very fast but effectively and really meet some long-term investments. I think I wanted to make sure that I shared before we jump into that what our team did at KHRC to come up with this list of ideas. We realize that we're not the ones spending the funds and not the ones ultimately on the hook for the use of the funds. So we've worked closely with the Office of Recovery on our ideas to make sure that they meet the applicable requirements. But we also were thoughtful about ensuring that they were the most directly COVID-related housing expenditures, that these ideas would utilize existing housing partners and nonprofits in your communities. We realize that you as communities have a lot on your plates and that housing administration or management is not your cup of tea. We get that. So instead, what we're trying to do is identifying partners out there that you could work with to utilize those funds to address your community's housing needs. We also recognize that you are the experts in what your housing or what your communities need. Some communities need rental assistance. Some communities need emergency shelters. Some communities need maybe some kind of home ownership, foreclosure or eviction representation. And all of those are important needs. And you as communities know your needs better than we do at the state level. So we try to just offer a true menu of different ideas for you to pursue and for us to be a partner. Lastly, we did try to really think about how you could spend the funds by the end of the calendar year, which I know is important. The KHRC kind of views our role in this situation as a dock connector in this effort, and we are certainly here as a resource and a partner to make this as easy as a job as possible for you. So let's jump into just a couple of the ideas we had. The first kind of involves emergency housing. Emergency housing is something that we work with regularly. We already administer the Emergency Solutions Grant. One of our ideas here was for, while emergency shelters in your communities may already be getting some extra federal assistance, there are some funds that are ineligible for use under the traditional emergency shelter program. One suggestion is for you to identify the emergency shelter in your communities and to reach out to them and see if they, first of all, if they just need anything, operating assistance, PPE, cleaning supplies, anything to help them address evictions or homeless prevention that's directly tied to homelessness due to COVID or due to this pandemic. One idea was to actually use these federal funds to purchase buildings to be used as shelters for individuals directly impacted by COVID. I know I'm throwing a lot at you and I'm speaking through these very quick, but we are providing a link in this email or in this slide on who to contact. James Chisholm is actually our Emergency Solutions Grant Program Administrator. He's familiar with most of the shelters around the state, including domestic violence shelters, I might add. But also I'd encourage you to search our website for a service provider in your area. Later on, we'll also share a link. What we've done is we've provided a spreadsheet that basically has every county in the state and all the different service providers, not just emergency shelters, but all of the housing partners that we work with. So you can search unique to your county, which should help you administer those funds quickly. So that's emergency housing. I'm sorry, I'm just backing up to make sure I didn't miss a slide here. Our next idea relates to community solutions. This is kind of utilizing that framework of partners that we have around the state. Some of the ideas that we thought about was the counties reaching out to their local community action agencies. I think most people are familiar with community action agencies. They administer everything from Head Start to a variety of anti-poverty programs, not just housing, but food assistance and transportation, and a lot of very important needs in their communities. Community action agencies serve the entire state. We're going to provide you a list of those and kind of a map of coverage here shortly. But our idea was to really work with them to identify their COVID-related needs, and we recognize that these funds have to be used for COVID-related needs. However, you can tie it into anything that the community action agencies can reasonably identify as COVID-related housing needs in their, or COVID-related needs in general in your community. Similarly, I would certainly reach out to any local nonprofits, homeless shelters, or other entities within your jurisdictions to see if they need PPE. And then our third idea on this area was really to think about what we're seeing and likely to see on the foreclosure and eviction front. We have some wonderful legal aid clinics in our state. Kansas Legal Services has field offices throughout the state. They've got wonderful attorneys who are used to handling various areas like this. KU and Washburn law schools both have law clinics that have wonderful faculty and students who are getting experience and could be a real asset that could utilize some COVID funding to help represent and maybe alleviate, mitigate the instances of foreclosure and eviction across the state. So those are ideas on the community solutions front. Here's our website address that actually identifies the community service block grant administrators, the community action agencies around the state. And we've got given a contact name for Christine Reimler, who directs that division that handles that program. So again, we're kind of serving as that dock connector. If you have questions, please reach out to us. We'll get you in touch with the people that really need to meet your specific needs in your community. Here's a map of our community action agencies. There's links to all of the websites, and this is all on our website as well. And I believe this PowerPoint will either be going out to you or will be posted soon with the KAC and with the Office of Recovery. So you'll have this to go back to later. Our next area that I wanted to talk about briefly is housing development. This is an area that we have a lot of expertise in just because that's exactly what we do. And we really wanted to, again, identify things that we could utilize existing partnerships and utilize those funds to get them spent out the door quickly. So a couple of the ideas we had for you as counties and communities is to, first of all, identify if you have a Habitat for Humanity affiliate in your jurisdiction or even in your general area. They have wonderful volunteer-led affiliates around the state. We're going to provide you the link to that on the next slide. Explore some partnerships with them, see if they need PPE, see if they have any housing needs for essential workers in your community, see if there's something that they could do to rehab to make their existing homes more COVID functional, you know, expanded broadband internet or some other creative but allowable idea for eligible expenditures of CARES Act. So I'd encourage you to reach out for your Habitat for Humanity affiliate. I'd also encourage communities to leverage the Moderate Income Housing Program. This is a program that is already existing. In a couple weeks here, or maybe this next week, KHRC will be issuing our request for proposal for the normal funding round for counties. We generally have $2 million, and that's for housing development or infrastructure development in the state. Counties are already the administrator of the program, so it would be a nice way to kind of complement what we're already doing in your communities. Of course, the CARES Act money needs to be used for COVID. So but what you can do is think about what COVID response needs could be intermixed with the Moderate Income Housing Program, whether it's building or rehabbing housing to accommodate internet enhancements, somehow thinking about better HVAC systems to for alleviate health concerns, rehabbing common spaces to allow for more social distancing, or just, again, just housing essential workers, those who are in our grocery stores, those who are our CNAs, those who work with our elderly and our childcare, so that we can ensure that our economy and our business continues to function during this crisis. Continuing on, KHRC already has a massive portfolio of affordable housing properties throughout the state. We are very happy to put you in contact with those properties. A lot of those may be experiencing revenue shortfalls due to tenants who can't make their monthly rent payments because of COVID. You know, they may have lost jobs, they may have had other financial disruptions due to the health crisis. Reach out to those properties, and we're happy to put you in touch with those. See if there's something that you can do as counties to cover those funding shortfalls. And then I'd mention internet upgrades. I think that's very much in line with kind of the infrastructure needs of the state. I think we've all realized how vital infrastructure is, internet is for our rural communities in particular, but for everyone, as we're doing everything from our homes. We, again, have a big portfolio of partners that we've got a link to here. You can search your county and find out who your affordable housing properties are, reach out to them and see if you can help. I know I'm flying through this and I just have a couple more slides. Who to contact? Habitat for Humanity affiliates. There's a statewide organization of the affiliates you can reach out to and find out exactly who to get in contact with in your community. The Moderate Income Housing Program that I mentioned, here's the program contact information. And then I had already mentioned that list that we've got. I believe we've even incorporated in some of our different housing partners that may not even be KHRC partners. So if you have public housing authorities, if you have other entities, USDA rural development properties, or some kind of HUD funded properties that aren't in KHRC's portfolio, they're included in that list as well. Just about done here. Here's the list for the PHAs that I mentioned. USDA Rural Development also has some various properties that you could search. Want to make sure that I highlight that KHRC annually puts on a housing conference. I know a lot of your communities already attend that conference. We're going to miss seeing you in person this year, but we hope to be back in person next year. This year it will be all virtual, but it will also be free. So we'd really love to have your communities represented and participating. There's going to be a lot of relevant discussion, and it'll be right in the middle of this COVID crisis as far as the Recovery Act funds. So I'd encourage you to register and participate. The link is on the slide. We're going to talk about the current housing needs, some of the resources that are out there to address housing needs, both during the regular times and during the COVID crisis. We're going to talk about how to manage housing development and administration during a pandemic and how to manage a nonprofit organization. And it's going to be good, useful information for you as county administrators. There's going to be some panelists from our office, from HUD, from the Spark Task Force. We've just really appreciated our partnership with them. So I encourage you to avail yourself of that opportunity. I'm not sure if there's time for questions, but we're available offline or else afterwards if time permits. With that, I'll turn it back to you, BJ. Thank you.
Can everyone hear me? Oh.
Yes, we
yes, VJ, quietly. I don't know if you can move closer to the microphone, but yes, quietly, we can hear you.
Perfect. So next we're going to have the team from the Kansas Department of Agriculture present on critical infrastructure. Again, thank them so much for their time today and really appreciate all that they do. So Kelsey, if you're on the line, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Good morning. I'm going to get this set up so that I can share. Hopefully I want to get this set on the right, situated in the right spot here. It's a pleasure to be with you here. I apologize that I had this set where I wanted it to be at, but let me get this going. Okay, can you guys see my screen? My slides?
Yes, Kelsey, we can see your slides and we can hear your voice very nicely, so you're good to go.
Perfect. Well, thank you for bearing with me. I was not real skilled at setting up some of this technical stuff. So anyway, it's a pleasure to be with you. Like I was introduced, I am with the Kansas Department of Agriculture, and just want to walk through some of the areas that we see have some potential for some funding. You'll probably see some repetitiveness in some potential areas, but I'm always happy to go through this and answer further questions as that might come along. Just generally speaking, agriculture in the state of Kansas, as you may know, is a very prevalent industry. It's everything from the traditional sectors that you might think of, such as beef cattle and ranching and wheat and corn. But agriculture also encompasses food processing, pet food processing, landscape and horticultural services, farm machinery manufacturing, and the list really goes on and on. There are 86 sectors, I believe, in Kansas that we identify as agriculture related, and we work with many of those in a number of different ways. During this time, as you may have been aware, we talked a lot about critical infrastructure. Certainly agriculture is part of that, as everything in agriculture somehow connects to the food that we eat or the clothes that we wear and the fuel that powers our vehicles. So supporting agriculture is certainly a key component, and there have been a number of disruptions due to the pandemic in the ag industry. So just a little fact on there, agriculture does contribute overall to the state about 245,000 jobs in Kansas, and that's roughly about 12.7% of the total workforce. So there's not a county out there that is not touched and impacted by agriculture in some way. This is just a slide. I just want to say that I think that this is a really unique an interesting time that we're in, and I think that it is incredible that as a state we are empowering locals at the county level to be able to make some of these decisions to positively influence and develop the local infrastructure and to support the local businesses and really, enhance that quality of life that we all value in our own local communities. So I just think I commend you for the hard work that's going to go into these next few days and weeks, but I know in the long run we're going to make some very incredible impacts to the counties and to our local communities. Starting off here, just diving right into some of our suggestions. On this page, we have addressed some of the touch points that the Department of Ag has with different county offices. First off, there's the conservation and watershed districts. These are co-funded between state resources and county resources. We work very closely with our county conservation districts and watershed districts. And during this time, the equipment needs have been great. Updated equipment, just even to have laptops to be able to work remotely is a need. Virtual meeting equipment, the ability to project screens, presentations, or put that screens up, and of course PPE. Those are some of the key things that we've found that there are needs for in many of the counties that we've worked with. Going to mention the county extension office. Obviously, this falls under K-State Research and Extension, but every county is tied to either a county office or a region, a district office. And again, anything that can be done to help with virtual meeting equipment, remote programming, as they try to equip and pivot and make sure that they can still continue to provide those wonderful extension services locally. There's some additional needs that those individuals and offices are having. The noxious weed department. So we often work very closely with the noxious weed departments. One of the items that I see in discussions, and I know this may sound frivolous in some capacity, but UAVs and the remote sensing capabilities out there. Right now, we're sending individuals out to survey the area for noxious weeds. There is equipment today that would allow for fewer people and less contact to go out and adjust those. So UAV, a drone-like system that has remote sensing, they can actually detect based on flower bloom and color. They can help identify and pinpoint those specific locations of then where we need to go out and control a problematic species. So just a few ideas there that go along with that capability. Jumping into agribusiness support, this is a very wide range, and I'm trying to highlight some of the areas that we've seen the most disruptions in Kansas thus far. So when we look at our food and meat processing facilities, whether it is the locally owned, state inspected facility, all the way up to our large national companies, they've been majorly impacted by COVID, whether it be through their workforce or just the demand for product. So there's a lot of demand out there. I know a lot of our small and medium facilities are struggling to keep up with the current local food interest. So if there's, thinking about potential grants for expansion for cold storage, the cold storage space tends to be the most constrictive point in the processing line for those small and medium facilities. So that's something. Employee training, education, if they bring on more staff, there's needs there and certain certifications that often have to be met. So if there's ways to help compensate or support those entities from that aspect. PPP, you're going to see that in just about everything I have here, because as critical infrastructure, in order to provide and keep that infrastructure going, personal protective equipment goes without saying that we have to have that in place to ensure that business, those entities continue to operate as smoothly and as effectively as possible despite the pandemic. Next up, our direct-to-consumer producer funding. This could be, what I'm mentioning here is we've got specialty crop growers, our fruit and vegetable producers who are supplying the local component of that. They too have had an increased demand. And so opportunities for some greenhouse expansion, technology updates, whether it be automatic waters that allow them to do more with the limited staff they might have. There's a wide range out there. And if this seems big and broad and vague, I am happy to dig into it with you, specifically with your county, to help identify some of the individuals or entities that we know and we work with that might have some specific needs in that area. Next, going on just to the direct to the consumer markets, when I think about that, I think about farmers markets, I think about local grocery stores, even your local restaurants. Everyone has had to pivot and change. E-commerce is critical. So if there's funding grant opportunities to help develop an online portal for these entities, to cover some of those additional expenses they've incurred because they are now having to be online. Maybe they've already made those arrangements, but those are an extra operating expense that they had not planned for prior to this pandemic. Those are some great areas that I know affect everyone's lives day to day. Then as I'm thinking about agritourism, as everyone wants to go out and spend time in nature and be engaged with the environments around them, and do so safely. There's a lot of agritourism out there and we can think about marketing and advertising funds that help enhance those local entities and broaden their scope and their base that they might be appealing to. Animal facilities is also another broad category. I'm going to walk through this, but really anything that engages with animals, animals have to continue to be fed, just like we do. So we don't want to forget about those facilities as well. Livestock auction markets, maybe the more traditional entity on this list, but high frequency ear tag readers, removing some of the person-to-person interaction and the slowed process of some of that happens of recording the information of the cattle that are moving through. That can speed that process up and remove some of that person-to-person contact, as well as your employee training and funding, PPE and safety infrastructure. So whether that's the sneeze guards and strategic locations, if it's having masks available when someone shows up, and there's just a wide variety of support that can be provided in those operations. Small animal shelters, whether it's a local humane society or a rescue, we've had a heightened alert of individuals of animals that don't have homes. So there's been undue additional burdens placed on these shelters throughout the state. Some of them may not have access online to help promote and to help adopt those animals. So thinking about equipment they might need to be able to take those pictures and get that online, that instead, before the community, local individuals would come into those locations, that can help them and keep their business running and flowing smoothly. And of course, PPE. And really animal operations as a whole. You think about horse boarding facilities, just pet boarding facilities that are ongoing. I know we've had to put some tools in place to help support those, as if we have a family member becomes ill, they want to send their animal to a facility so that they are not exposed. And there's been an increased interest and need in those areas. Then also thinking about some of the traditional entities such as feed yards, dairies, those large feed yards, they do have staff who need PPE and have concerns that, if someone goes down, we've got to keep those operations operating, animals being fed and move through the market that they conduct. Dairies the same way, obviously, whether it be milk production or just the ongoing routine needs of a dairy processor, those needs are there. I also very much see that some of these entities have not always thought about the continued operations and what that looks like in a pandemic. We've spent a lot of time helping assess the situation, helping look at the business operations, how they flow, and where those critical points might be that they might need to think about putting some safety measures and changing their standard operating procedures in some ways. So there's certainly continued needs out there for those businesses to have someone come in and to be able to help make some assessments and provide guidance. So that could be, funds for working with a consultant or private entities out there that can cover more ground than a small agency in the state. And then just some other suggestions that connect with agriculture and broad level. Of course, childcare facilities, after school programming. This is essential to the essential workers out there. Oh, pardon me, my light just went off. And supporting those facilities in your county, those hospital workers or those ag employees that have to go to work every day, no matter what, making sure that there's childcare available for those people as well. I mean, just as well as anyone in the area, but that is a real need. And as we look forward to, if a school closes in the middle of a season, if it, if the cases spike and we have to react and pivot again differently, making sure that those types of facilities in your community are well equipped and supported to adjust and to still be able to operate under these unique situations. Whether that's bringing on new employees and the additional expenses for background checks, they've been having to, a number of children based on staff has gone down. So in order to operate, a lot of those facilities have had to hire more people, and there's additional expenses that go along with that, and they're not bringing in any more revenue. So just a variety of things to think about there. Increased cleaning is always something that any business entity out there has to consider. And of course, my PPE that I like to talk about. Broadband, obviously broadband has become very critical to our state, and we knew that we have some deficiencies as a state and in some unique areas. So is there a way to supply, some grants to those last mile coverage individuals that otherwise wouldn't have accessibility? Some of our locally owned providers have projects that they'd like to do if there are funds available, and now there's a critical need to making sure that we expand that coverage there. Obviously, the broadband office out of the Department of Commerce has a lot of information on this, and I'm sure they'll be sharing later on, but broadband certainly supports agriculture and the entities that we engage with. So I wanted to mention that this item as well. And then lastly, as we look at community events, we all want to be out and engaged in our community and continue to have the events that we love and enjoy locally. But how do we support that? How do we make sure that as a community we can engage in those ways? And what are we going to need? Obviously, we need PPE, but then thinking about, is there a community building that needs modifications so that anyone using it has some enhanced safety measures put in place? Are there portable hand washing stations that an organization borrows from the county when they host an event or in a community or a public space? And then just thinking about those cleaning funds. Cleaning expenses have heightened for everyone, and so how do we help support that and make sure that we're not creating additional undue burden on our local entities? So those are just some of the ideas that we had talked about at KDA. I know that there's others out there that we haven't discovered or explored, and I'm willing to visit with any of you one-on-one. I'm happy to direct you with any of our programs that might have a more direct contact with some of your county offices. But I very much appreciate your time today, and I look forward to helping support your endeavors, and I appreciate all that you are doing. So with that, Vijay, I'm gonna exit out of here and turn it back over.
Thanks, Kelsey. Hopefully everyone can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you, Vijay. It's kind of muffled, though, if you can get closer to your microphone.
Sure. Hopefully that's a little bit better.
Perfect.
So last couple of things here. First is just a clarification on the rounds. And I want to thank really quickly Ryan and Kelsey. We're going to do some more webinars next week and the weeks after that. Next week, as I mentioned before, is going to be childcare. I want to call out that I posted the link to the webinar resources from today in the chat. I think there were some pathing issues in terms of getting to it from different parts of the website, so we'll look at that, but the link is there. clarifications on rounds. I think there was some questions related to what do rounds 2 and 3 mean for counties, and I want to be very clear that round 1 is the only round that counties are responsible for. So in terms of accounting and reporting, the 400 million in payments to counties that we're talking about in these webinars and these forms are the only ones that you all are responsible for. Rounds 2 and 3 are handled entirely at the state level and are made through state level investments, through state programs and other sorts of administration avenues. So there may be funds that come to the county via grant programs or what have you, or PPE that comes to counties. But in terms of accounting and reporting, you only have to worry about round 1. You don't need to worry about round 2 and round 3. Those are handled entirely at the state level. Next steps, review the direct aid form. It's on the website as I submitted. I gave you the link to that. We're still working on posting the reimbursement form on the website. And I appreciate the patience on that as we get the website figured out. Again, it'll be released via email. Submit your resolutions and primary contact forms if you haven't done so already. Continue to organize and collect your reimbursements. The next webinar will be the 15th from 2 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. Again, focused on childcare. And again, we'll have a webinar that we're going to try to dedicate solely to clarifying questions and rehashing these specific spreadsheets as needed, depending on what questions we're getting. So I want to call that out. And then finally, I just want to turn it over to Shelby really quickly to talk through a lot of the guidance interpretation process questions that we've been getting on the webinar.
Thanks, Vijay. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I just wanted to provide a quick piece of clarification on the guidance interpretation process and why that's so critical that we use that for determining eligible and ineligible expenditures. Because of the federal guidance, as you all can see on the website, is 11 pages long, and it doesn't specifically address some of the very specific questions that you all are asking and that you all would like to use funds for. We have the guidance interpretation process that we've developed to be used as a tool that where the state can issue a formal legal ruling on what we're interpreting the guidance from the federal government. This is really an audit protection for the state and for the counties for if the federal government were to come back and say in an audit, this is or is not an eligible expenditure. We have a formal written process that was reviewed and vetted through legal to comply within those guidelines and to comply with what is in that federal that federal guidance. And so I know that has been a point of frustration for you all, and I apologize. But we are still working to just get an answer that is on some of these pieces of what are and are not eligible expenditures. Once those, like I said, we've received a handful. Once we have answers on those, we'll post them online. We will continue to post all of the interpretations online so that way you all can see what has been submitted by others and how we've interpreted guidance on issues or items that you might be interested in funding at your county level, and then items that you might be interested in, or how you can see that we're interpreting that guidance. But that does also provide you with a kind of a tool or a resource that once we've issued a formal ruling, that gets the state back on the hook for those funds and protects you in the case of an audit. And so that's why I know that it's taking a little bit longer than you all would like. And I know you all are very eager to get answers to these questions regarding eligibility. And so we're working very diligently on that, but it's a little bit more of a process. And so we'll post those online once we have them. And I'll turn it back over to Vijay now.
So as I'm monitoring the chat here from my previous explanation, I know the question has been, what is the state going to be investing in rounds 2 and 3? I want to be very clear here, and I'll share my screen. If you go to the Spark website and you go to meeting materials, you can see all of the presentations that have been done at the executive committee and the steering committee level as it relates to round 2. The last July 6th executive committee meeting included a full list of priorities that the SPARK committee has decided for round 2. So you can see everything that they're planning on focusing on the areas of education, connectivity, health, and economic development, and each of the priorities within those. And so the meeting presentation, the agenda, all of the meetings are on the website. So you all have full visibility into all the discussions that we have related to what we're going to spend money for in round 2. We haven't started the process for round 3, but that's down the line. So you all don't need to worry about that right now. Round 2 is directly relates to the questions I've been seeing about. It would be helpful to know what the state is spending money on, so we know what to spend money on. For that information, since it directly aligns with your planning priorities for round 2, all of that can be found by listening to the meetings or going through the presentations. And in the next meeting for executive committee and steering committee, there will be, as we've talked about before, clear presentations on exactly the programs the state is spending money on. And all of that will happen before the August 15th deadline. So you will have and continue to have full visibility into what the state is planning as it relates to round 2. So I want to call that out and make sure that you all look at those resources first. And then the last thing that I will say is, again, we will continue to post the information from these webinars, and we'll send out an email and again use the presentation for round 2 that's on the website if you want to see a condensed version of what the state is planning on spending on, if you don't want to listen to the actual meeting. So with that, appreciate everyone's time today. And Bruce, I'll turn it back over to you.
Awesome. Okay, guys, thank you again so much to Vijay and Shelby and Taylor, all the work that you guys are doing. I know you're overwhelmed, and we appreciate all the work that you've done, and we appreciate all the patience and whatnot that we all have to exhibit this time on this project. Real quick, I had seen some discussion about potentially putting together a listserv so that you folks could communicate with one another with projects and things like that, ideas. We are checking with our internet service provider to see if that is something that we could host, and if we can, then we certainly will make that available. And you will be able to register your email address with that and get on board, and then you can exchange information and ideas and whatnot. So we're working on that to see if we can do something along those lines. And then also, as far as the KAC website is concerned, basically that is a courtesy to you all. So the COVID office that VJ keeps posting stuff to, they're the official group. That's where you really need to go for your one-stop shop for everything. We're just posting it as a sidelight to make it a little bit easier if you forget the address or you're not at a spot where you have access to their website. You could potentially find some stuff that you're looking for on the KAC website. But really, Vijay and all the group that they're working on, that's where all that stuff gets posted. Then he sends it over to me, and then we try to ship it out to you all. So that's kind of been the chain of command. So just know that we're working in close concert with them, but don't look for us to be the official site of Vijay and whatnot. That's the official place that you need to go for all this information. So with that, folks, I know it has been announced Wednesday of next week. We're going to do this again at 2 o'clock, and that was posted up. And then also again on Friday afternoon, we're going to be back to do another webinar as well. And Kim Qualls in our office will send out the announcement first thing next week to both of those webinars. And so then you should be able to get on just like you did this week. So with that, folks, have a great rest of the day, a great weekend, and we'll thank you all, and we'll see you next time. Take care.